Black delivery girl took 5 bullets for Korean Mafia king's mother. He made her his wife at the spot. A sharp crack tore through the Gangnam rain like a whip snapping against bone. For a split second, Jasmine didn't understand what had happened. The sugary, artificial sweetness of her peach bubble tea still lingered on her tongue, but it was instantly washed away by a sudden, overwhelming taste of copper. It flooded her mouth, thick and metallic, drowning out the world. Then, the force hit her. It wasn't a sting. It wasn't a prick. It was a sledgehammer aimed directly at her right shoulder. The impact spun her around, her heavy delivery boots skidding on the wet asphalt. Her helmet rattled against her skull. Before she could gasp, the second impact came. Fire. Pure, liquid fire erupted in her thigh, shattering the bone. Her leg simply gave out, collapsing under her weight like a wet paper towel. Get down, her brain screamed. But she couldn't just drop. Directly in front of her, frozen in the headlights of the idling black sedan, stood the elderly woman she had just handed the bag of spicy rice cakes to. The woman was small, dressed in an elegant silk hanbok that cost more than Jasmine made in a year, and she was staring wide-eyed at the darkness of the alleyway. Jasmine didn't think. She didn't calculate the odds. She didn't wonder if her health insurance, which didn't exist, would cover this. She just moved. She threw her body forward, tackling the small woman, wrapping her arms around the silk and smelling jasmine perfume mixed with the ozone of gunpowder. Thud. The third bullet hit Jasmine's back, punching the air out of her lungs. Thud. The fourth tore through her side, grazing a rib. Thud. The fifth bullet slammed into her lower back, sending a shockwave of numbness down her spine. Jasmine hit the wet pavement hard, acting as a human shield, her body covering the elderly woman completely. The gravel dug into her cheek. The rain, freezing cold and relentless, pelted against the back of her neck, mixing with the hot, sticky fluid that was already soaking through her thick delivery jacket. Tires screeched. An engine roared, sounding like a wounded beast, and the shooters sped away into the neon-lit night of Seoul. Then, silence. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. The only sound was the rain hissing against the streetlights and the ragged, wet gasping of Jasmine's own breath. Every inhale was a battle. Every exhale was a gurgle. Underneath her, the elderly woman was shaking, sobbing quietly into the asphalt. "Are you okay?" Jasmine tried to ask, but no words came out. Only a cough that splattered red across the wet gray stone. She couldn't feel her legs anymore. The fire in her shoulder had turned into a dull, throbbing void. She stared at a puddle near her nose. It was turning pink, then dark red, expanding rapidly like a blooming flower of death. Footsteps approached. These weren't the frantic, scrambling footsteps of bystanders running to help. These were slow, deliberate, heavy, the sound of expensive leather pressing firmly against the wet ground. The rain seemed to part. A shadow fell over Jasmine, blocking out the harsh glare of the street lamp. She forced her eyes to focus. Through the blurry haze of rain and blood, she saw shoes. Polished, black Italian leather. Pristine, despite the weather. Above them, a suit cut so sharp it could draw blood. The elderly woman beneath Jasmine gasped, her voice trembling with a mix of terror and relief. "Ju-young," the woman whispered. Jasmine tried to lift her head. The man crouching down beside them was beautiful in a way that made your stomach turn. High cheekbones, eyes dark as a bottomless well, and a mouth set in a grim, flat line. He didn't look like a savior. He looked like the Reaper. Yeon Ju-young, the dragon of Gangnam. He didn't speak immediately. He reached out, his hand large and warm, and gently touched the elderly woman's face. "Mother, are you hurt?" His voice was low, a rumble that vibrated through the pavement and into Jasmine's chest. "No," the mother sobbed, clutching Ju-yang's sleeve. She saved me. She took them all, Ju-yang." Ju-yang's gaze shifted. For the first time, he looked at Jasmine. He didn't look at her face. He looked at the blood pooling around her. He looked at the holes in her delivery jacket. He looked at the cheap, worn-out sneakers twitching involuntarily. His eyes were cold, devoid of pity. They were assessing the damage like a mechanic looking at a totaled car. He reached out and touched the wound on her shoulder. Jasmine flinched, a fresh wave of agony tearing a groan from her throat. "Don't touch," she wheezed. Zhu Yang paused. He looked at his fingers, now stained with her crimson blood. He rubbed the blood between his thumb and forefinger, testing its viscosity. "Stay still," he commanded. His tone wasn't comforting. It was an order. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, cutting through the rain. Within seconds, flashing red and blue lights bounced off the wet buildings. An ambulance screeched to a halt at the mouth of the alley. 2 paramedics jumped out, rushing over with a stretcher. The first paramedic, a man with tired eyes and a sneer etched onto his face, saw the scene. He saw the expensive suit. He saw the silk hanbok. And then he saw Jasmine. He saw her dark skin. He saw her scooter helmet lying in the gutter. He saw the delivery logo on her back. "Madam Yun." The paramedic rushed past Jasmine, almost stepping on her hand, to get to the mother. "We need to get you to the VIP suite immediately." "Are you injured?" "I am fine." The mother cried, pushing the paramedic's hands away. "Help her. Help the girl." The paramedic glanced down at Jasmine, with a look of utter boredom. He sighed, the sound loud and dismissive. He looked at his partner. "Secure the madam first," the paramedic barked. "We don't have space for the foreign trash in this unit. Call a public transport for her." "Wait," Jasmine tried to say. Her vision was tunneling. The edges of the world were turning black. "Help." The paramedic looked down at her. His boot collided with her delivery bag, which was lying next to her head. The bag tipped over. The plastic containers inside burst open. Spicy tteokbokki and fish cakes spilled out into the dirty, blood-filled rainwater. The food she had worked 2 hours to buy, the food she was delivering to pay her rent, was ruined. "Gross," the paramedic muttered. He kicked the bag further away, as if it were contaminated. "Look at this mess," he said, looking back at Zhu Yang's mother. "She is just a delivery girl, madam. Stop crying. These people, they are always causing trouble. She probably brought this violence here. She probably owes money to the wrong people." Jasmine felt a tear leak from her eye, not from pain, but from a rage so hot it momentarily burned through the numbness. She wanted to scream that she was innocent. She wanted to scream that she had just taken 5 bullets for a woman she didn't know. But she choked. Blood bubbled up in her throat, gagging her. The paramedic knelt down, but not to help. He grabbed Jasmine's arm roughly, trying to drag her out of the way so he could place the stretcher for the mother. "Move," he spat. Jasmine closed her eyes. This was it. She was going to die here, in the rain, labeled as trash. Crack. The sound was louder than the gunshots. Jasmine's eyes snapped open. The paramedic was on the ground. He was lying 3 feet away, clutching his jaw, blood pouring from his mouth where his teeth used to be. Zhu Yang stood over him. The dragon had moved so fast Jasmine hadn't even seen it. His hand was still raised, the back of his knuckles red. Silence fell over the alley again. Even the rain seemed to hold its breath. Zhu Yang didn't look at the paramedic. He looked at his mother. "Get in the car, mother," Zhu Yang said. His voice was terrifyingly calm. It was the calm before a tsunami. But now. The mother scrambled up, terrified by her son's tone, and rushed toward the black sedan. Zhu Yang turned back to Jasmine. He knelt in the blood and rain. He didn't care about his suit. He didn't care about the mud. He looked at the paramedic, who was whimpering on the ground. "You said she is just a delivery girl?" Zhu Yang asked. The paramedic nodded frantically, spitting out a tooth. "Yes, sir. I was just prioritizing the..." Zhu Yang reached into his breast pocket. He pulled out a small velvet pouch. With a flick of his wrist, he opened it. Inside sat a ring. It wasn't a diamond. It was jade. Ancient, deep green jade, carved with the insignia of a roaring dragon. It was a ring that signified power. It was a ring that signified ownership. Zhu Yang took Jasmine's left hand. His grip was iron. She was too weak to pull away. She watched, her vision swimming, as he slid the heavy jade ring onto her ring finger. It was too big, but the blood made it stick. It looked grotesque. The beautiful green stone against her blood-soaked, trembling hand. Ju Yang leaned in close. His face was inches from hers. She could smell peppermint and expensive tobacco. "Listen to me closely," he whispered. He turned his head to look at the terrified paramedic. "She is not a delivery girl," Ju Yang announced. His voice echoed off the wet brick walls. "She is my Yobo." The paramedic froze. His eyes bulged. "Wife?" Ju Yang turned back to Jasmine. He scooped her up into his arms. The movement sent a jolt of agony through her body so intense she almost blacked out, but he held her tight against his chest. He held her as if she were made of glass. He walked toward the ambulance, stepping over the spilled food. He kicked the back doors open and laid her gently on the stretcher. The paramedic scrambled to his feet, trembling. Sir, I didn't know, I thought." "Phone," Ju Yang demanded, holding out his hand. The paramedic fumbled for the radio handset and gave it to him. Ju Yang pressed the button. "Connect me to the director." "Now," a static voice answered. "Yes, sir?" Ju Yang looked down at Jasmine. Her eyes were rolling back in her head. Her breathing was shallow, a rattling sound that signaled the end was coming. "I am bringing a patient in," Ju Yang said into the radio. His eyes never left Jasmine's face. "Clear the trauma center. Get the best surgeons, not the ones on duty. Call the heads of the departments. Wake them up." There was a pause on the other end. "Sir, protocol states." Ju Yang cut him off. His voice dropped an octave, becoming a growl that promised hell on earth. "If she dies, this hospital burns." He threw the radio at the wall, shattering it. "Drive," he roared at the driver. As the ambulance lurched forward, Jasmine felt the cold jade ring pressing against her skin. It felt heavy. It felt like a shackle. She looked up at the man looming over her, the man who had just claimed her as his wife while she bled out on a stretcher. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice barely a breath. Ju Yang took a cloth and pressed it firmly against the wound in her neck. "I am your fate," he replied. "Now sleep." Jasmine's eyes fluttered shut. The darkness finally took her. Jasmine thought the bullets were the hard part. She was wrong. The cage was harder. Waking up felt like drowning in milk. Everything was white. Everything was soft. Everything was terrifyingly silent. She gasped, her body jerking upward, but a firm, gentle restraint held her down. Panic flared in her chest, hot and immediate. She wasn't on the wet asphalt anymore. She wasn't smelling gasoline and blood. She smelled lavender and expensive, sterile air. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to the light. This wasn't a hospital room. It was a palace. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the sprawling, glittering skyline of Seoul at night. The curtains were velvet. The sheets covering her legs were silk, cooling against her feverish skin. She tried to move her right arm, but it was heavy. A cast. She looked down. Her shoulder was bandaged. Her thigh was wrapped tight. But the pain? The pain was distant, muffled by a heavy fog of painkillers. She turned her head. He was there. Hyun Ju Yang sat in a leather armchair in the corner of the room. He had shed the blood-soaked suit jacket. Now, he wore a crisp white dress shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms that were corded with muscle and veined like marble. He was peeling an apple. The sound was the only thing in the room. Shik. 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 The small paring knife glinted under the recessed lighting. It was razor-sharp. He moved it with the precision of a surgeon, the red skin of the apple curling away in one long, unbroken ribbon. He didn't look at the apple. He looked at her. "You are finally back with us," he said. His voice was low, devoid of the panic she remembered from the alley. It was smooth, dark, and heavy. Jasmine tried to speak. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "Water," she croaked. Ju Yang didn't get up. He didn't ring a bell. He finished peeling the apple, sliced a piece off, and stabbed it with the tip of the knife. He stood up, towering over the bed, and walked toward her. He held the knife out. The slice of apple hovered inches from her lips. "Eat first," he commanded. "The sugar will help the shock." "I said water," Jasmine whispered, her defiance weak but present. Ju Yang's eyes narrowed slightly. A flicker of amusement? Or irritation? It was impossible to tell. He lowered the knife, picked up a crystal glass from the bedside table, and held the straw to her lips. Drink. Slowly. Jasmine drank. The water was cold and clean. She gulped it down until he pulled the glass away. Enough, he said. You will get sick. He sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped under his weight. He was too close. His presence sucked the oxygen out of the room. Where am I? Jasmine asked, pulling the silk sheet up to her chin. This isn't a public ward. Juyang sliced another piece of apple. No, he replied calmly. This is the VIP wing of the Asan Medical Center. I own this floor. Jasmine looked at the door. There were two men standing outside the glass, their backs to her. They were huge, wearing identical black suits and earpieces. Why are there guards? She asked. Juyang ignored the question. He held the apple slice to her mouth again. The tip of the knife was dangerously close to her bottom lip. Eat. Jasmine stared at the blade. Then she stared at his eyes. They were obsidian black, unreadable, and focused entirely on her mouth. She opened her lips and took the apple. It was sweet, crisp, and cold. She chewed and swallowed. I need to go, she said, trying to sit up. The room spun. Lie down, Juyang ordered. He didn't raise his voice, but the authority in it slammed her back against the pillows. My rent, Jasmine gasped, fighting the dizziness. I missed my shift. I lost the food. My boss? He's going to fire me. I have to call him. Where is my phone? Your phone is gone, Juyang said. He ate a slice of apple himself, chewing slowly. It was crushed in the chaos. I need a phone, Jasmine insisted. I have to explain. There is nothing to explain, Juyang interrupted. Your boss has been informed that you quit. What? Jasmine's eyes went wide. You told him I quit? You can't do that. I need that job. That was my only income. How am I supposed to pay for this? She gestured frantically around the luxurious room. I can't afford this. I don't have insurance for a suite. I don't even have insurance for a bandage. Juyang placed the knife on the table with a soft clink. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. He looked at her like one might look at a rare, confusing animal in a zoo. Money, he said, as if the word tasted bad. You are worried about money. I am poor, Jasmine snapped. We worry about money. That's how it works. Juyang reached out. His hand hovered over her face. Then he tucked a stray curl of her hair behind her ear. His fingers grazed her cheek. His skin was hot. You are not poor anymore, he said softly. Jasmine froze. What does that mean? Juyang sat back. You took 5 bullets for my mother. Do you know who my mother is? She is the woman in the hanbok, Jasmine said. She is the matriarch of the Yeon Syndicate, Juyang corrected. And I am the dragon. In our world, a debt of blood is the heaviest chain a man can wear. You saved the most important life in my empire. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Your rent is paid. Your landlord has been persuaded to break your lease. Your belongings have been moved. Moved? Jasmine's heart hammered against her ribs. Moved where? Here, Juyang said simply. Or rather, to my estate. You cannot return to your apartment. Why not? Because you are dead, Juyang said. Jasmine stopped breathing. The shooters, Juyang continued, picking up the knife again. They are from a rival clan. They think they killed the delivery girl. They think you were just collateral damage. If they find out you survived, if they find out you saw their faces, they will come back to finish the job. He pointed the knife at the window, at the city lights. Out there, you are a target. Out there, you are a loose end. He turned the knife back to her. But in here, in my shadow, you are untouchable. Jasmine shook her head. This was insane. This was a movie plot. This wasn't her life. I am not staying with you, she said, her voice shaking. I am going to the police. I will get protection. Juyang laughed. It was a dark, dry sound. The police? He leaned in close again, his cologne filling her nose. The police answer to me. If you go to them, the file will disappear. You will disappear. He grabbed her hand, her left hand. Jasmine looked down. The jade ring was still there. It had been cleaned of blood, the green stone glowing dully under the hospital lights. It felt heavy on her finger, like an anchor. "Take it off," she whispered. "No," Juyang said. "It's too big. It's ridiculous. I am not your wife." "You are what I say you are," Juyang replied. His thumb rubbed over the dragon carving on the jade. Jasmine tried to pull her hand away, but his grip was iron. "Listen to me, Jasmine." He said her name for the first time. It sounded strange in his accent. Possessive. "You are a survivor. I saw what you did in that alley. You didn't run. You didn't freeze. You acted. You have fire in you." He squeezed her hand. "But a fire without a hearth burns out. Or it burns everything around it. You need walls. You need a fortress." "I don't need a fortress," Jasmine spat. "I need my life back." "Your life is gone." Juyang's voice rose, cracking the calm veneer for a split second. "The girl who delivered food? She died in that alley. The girl who worried about rent? She bled out on the pavement." He stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. He looked out at the city, his back rigid. "You are in a new world now, my world, and my world is dangerous. But inside this room, inside my house, it is a sanctuary." Jasmine stared at his back. She felt tears pricking her eyes, not from sadness but from frustration. She was trapped. He had stripped her of her job, her home, her identity. "You kidnapped me," she accused him. "I saved you," he countered, not turning around. "You are keeping me prisoner. I am keeping you alive." He turned back to face her. His expression was unreadable again. The mask was back in place. "You need to rest. The doctor says the bone in your thigh needs time to knit. You will be here for 2 weeks. Then, we go home." "Home," Jasmine repeated bitterly. "Your home. Our home," Juyang corrected. He walked back to the bed. He looked at the plate of apple slices. "Finish the fruit. I'm not hungry." Juyang sighed. He picked up the slice again. He held it to her lips. "Jasmine," he warned, "do not make me force you." Jasmine looked at the knife in his other hand. She looked at the determination in his jaw. She realized then that he wasn't used to hearing the word no. He was a king in his own violent kingdom, and she was just a peasant who had stumbled into the throne room. She opened her mouth. He fed her the apple. His fingers brushed her lips, lingering for a second longer than necessary. The touch sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "Good," he murmured. He placed the knife down and checked his gold watch. "I have business to attend to. The men who did this, they need to be taught a lesson." He adjusted his cuffs. "Stay in the bed. Do not try to leave the room. The guards have orders to stop you." He walked to the door. "Juyang?" Jasmine called out. He stopped, his hand on the handle. He looked back over his shoulder. "Why?" she asked. "Why go through all this? You could have just paid for the surgery and sent me away. Why the ring? Why the wife lie? Why bring me into your house?" Juyang looked at her for a long moment. His gaze dropped to the jade ring on her finger, then back up to her eyes. "Because," he said softly, "when I saw you bleeding on that asphalt, when I saw you holding my mother while your own life drained away, I realized something." "What?" "That I have never seen anything so beautiful." He opened the door. "And I keep beautiful things." The door clicked shut, leaving Jasmine alone in the silence. The smell of lavender was suffocating. The silk sheets felt like a shroud. She looked at the jade ring. It seemed to pulse with the beat of her own heart. Jasmine thought the bullets were the hard part. She was wrong. The cage was harder. The click of the porcelain teacup against the saucer sounded like a gunshot in the silent drawing room. Jasmine flinched. The sound vibrated in her ears, louder than it should have been. Her nerves were still fried, the edges of her vision still prone to blurring if she moved her head too fast. She sat in a high-backed velvet chair that felt more like a throne than a seat. Her leg was propped up on a cushioned stool, the heavy cast hidden beneath the hem of a silk dress Juyang had provided. It was emerald green, matching the heavy jade ring that still weighed down her left hand. Across from her, the vultures were waiting. It was supposed to be a quiet tea, a welcome into the fold. But Juyang had business to attend to in his study, leaving Jasmine alone with the women of the inner circle for 10 minutes. 10 minutes was apparently enough time to be dissected. The woman sitting opposite Jasmine was stunning. Park Chae-rin. She had hair like spun ink and skin so pale it looked translucent. She was the daughter of one of Juyang's oldest business partners. She was also, Jasmine had quickly gathered, the woman who thought she would be sitting in Jasmine's chair. Chae-rin didn't hold a teacup. She held a glass of champagne, swirling the bubbles with a bored, predatory expression. "So," Chae-rin said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "You delivered noodles?" Jasmine straightened her back. The pain in her ribs flared, a sharp reminder of the bullets, but she ignored it. "I delivered everything," Jasmine corrected. "Food, groceries, medicine." Chae-rin laughed. It was a light, tinkling sound that made Jasmine's skin crawl. Fascinating. A courier. Like a mule. The other two women on the sofa giggled behind their fans. "Tell me," Chae-rin continued, leaning forward. "Did you steal the ring? Or did you just service him so well in the alley that he gave it to you as payment?" Jasmine's grip tightened on the armrest. Her nails dug into the velvet. "I saved his mother," Jasmine said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. Chae-rin waved her hand dismissively. "Yes, yes. The human shield story. Very heroic. Very desperate. It is amazing what people like you will do to escape the slums. You see a rich man, you see a gun, and you think, this is my lottery ticket." "I didn't think anything," Jasmine snapped. "I just moved." Chae-rin took a sip of champagne. Her eyes raked over Jasmine's face, analyzing her features with open disgust. "You don't belong here," Chae-rin said. Her tone dropped the sweetness. It became cold, hard. "Look at you. You are dark. You are loud. You take up too much space. You ruin the aesthetic of this house." Jasmine felt the heat rising in her cheeks. It wasn't shame. It was fury. "Juyang brought me here," Jasmine said. "Juyang brings strays home all the time," Chae-rin countered. "He likes broken things. He likes to fix them. But once he realizes that some stains cannot be washed out, he throws them away." She set her glass down on the marble coffee table. "You are temporary," Chae-rin hissed. "You are a novelty, a flavor of the month. Do you really think the Dragon of Gangnam is going to keep a delivery girl as his wife? You are disposable." The word hung in the air. Disposable. Jasmine opened her mouth to retort, to tell this woman exactly where she could shove her champagne flute, but the heavy oak doors of the drawing room swung open. Juyang walked in. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The air grew thinner. The temperature dropped. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit, no tie. He looked tired. He looked lethal. He didn't look at the guests. He walked straight to Jasmine. "Are you in pain?" he asked, ignoring the room completely. He touched her forehead with the back of his hand, checking for a fever. "I am fine," Jasmine muttered, pulling away slightly. Juyang frowned at her rejection. Then he turned to the room. He walked to the liquor cart and poured himself a whiskey. "I trust you have been making my wife feel welcome," he said, his back to them. Chae-rin stood up. She smoothed her dress, a smile plastering itself onto her face. "Of course, Juyang," she cooed. "We were just getting to know her. She was telling us about her previous employment. It is so quaint, so rugged." Juyang turned around. He took a slow sip of the amber liquid. "Quaint," he repeated flatly. "Yes," Chae-rin laughed nervously. "Although, I was just telling her that she might find the transition difficult. You know how it is. You can take the rat out of the gutter, but you cannot take the gutter out of the rat." The room went dead silent. The other two women stopped breathing. They looked at Chae-rin with wide, terrified eyes. Jasmine looked at Juyang. He didn't explode. He didn't yell. He didn't throw his glass. He just looked at Chae-rin. He looked at her with a profound, terrifying boredom. "Gutter rat," Juyang said softly. "Is that what you called her?" Chae-rin faltered. She realized, too late, that she had stepped on a landmine. I was just joking, Juyang. It is just a figure of speech. You know I care about the reputation of your family. I just don't want you to be embarrassed by someone who is so different. Jiang reached into his pocket. He pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times. He wasn't looking at Che-rin anymore. He was looking at a graph. Your father is Park Ji-sung, correct? Jiang asked casually. CEO of Park Shipping? Che-rin blinked. Yes. Why? Jiang tapped the screen again. Park Shipping has been struggling with liquidity lately, he murmured, as if talking to himself. Heavily leveraged, relying on the Busan merger to stay afloat. He took another sip of whiskey. Che-rin's smile vanished. What are you doing? Jiang swiped his finger across the screen. A simple, lazy motion. I am calling in the loans, Jiang said. What? Che-rin whispered. I own the bank that holds your father's debt, Jiang explained. He didn't look up. And I just ordered the immediate repayment of all outstanding principals. He tapped again. And I just dumped my 20% stake in his company. The market will see the dragon selling, and they will panic. The stock is free-falling as we speak. Jiang turned the phone screen toward Che-rin. She stared at it. Red lines. Vertical red lines crashing down. No, she gasped. You can't. That is billions of won. That is my inheritance. Jiang put the phone back in his pocket. He looked at her now, and the look in his eyes was ruthless. You came into my house, he said, his voice low and vibrating with danger. You drank my wine. And you insulted my wife. He took a step toward her. Che-rin took a step back, hitting the edge of the sofa. You called her disposable, Jiang said. He checked his watch. It has been 30 seconds. Your father is now bankrupt. The merger is dead. Your assets are being frozen. He took another step. Who is the gutter rat now? Che-rin? Che-rin began to shake. Tears welled up in her eyes. Jiang, please. This is a mistake. My father. He has nothing to do with this. He raised you, Jiang said coldly. He taught you that you could speak to people like that and get away with it. He failed. And now, he pays the price. Jiang turned his back on her. Get out, he commanded. Che-rin stood there, paralyzed. Security. Jiang roared. 2 guards burst into the room. Remove her, Jiang ordered. And remove the others. If they ever step foot on my property again, break their legs. The guards grabbed Che-rin by the arms. She screamed. It was a high, piercing shriek of a spoiled child who had finally touched a hot stove. You're a monster. She screamed as they dragged her out. You're crazy. She's just a nobody. Jiang ignored the screaming. He waited until the doors slammed shut. Silence returned to the room. But it was a different silence. It was heavy with the scent of ozone and destruction. Jiang walked over to Jasmine. He set his whiskey glass down. He knelt beside her chair. He took her hand, the one with the jade ring. Jasmine stared at him. She was terrified. She had just watched him destroy a dynasty in less than a minute, without raising his pulse. You ruined her, Jasmine whispered. Jiang looked up at her. His eyes were soft again. Only for her. She insulted you, he said simply. She was just words, Jasmine stammered. Sticks and stones, Jiang. You didn't have to destroy her life. Jiang shook his head. You do not understand, Jasmine. He kissed her knuckles. He kissed the jade ring. In this world, respect is not given. It is taken. If I let her speak to you like that, tomorrow there will be 10 more like her. They will think you are weak. They will think I am weak. He stood up, towering over her, casting a long shadow. I am not a hero, Jasmine. I never told you I was. I am a villain. And villains protect what is theirs with fire. He gently touched the bandage on her shoulder. You took bullets for my blood. I spilled ink for your honor. It is a fair trade. Jasmine looked at the phone in his pocket. The weapon of mass destruction. You are dangerous, she said. Jiang smiled. It was a small, dark smile. I am the consequence, he replied. He offered her his hand. Come, dinner is served. And I promise, the conversation will be much better. Jasmine hesitated. She looked at his hand. It was the hand of a killer. The hand of a tyrant. But it was also the only hand that had reached for her when she was bleeding in the rain. She took it. He pulled her up, supporting her weight, and led her out of the room, leaving the empty champagne glass and the shattered life of Park Chae-rin behind them. But peace in the dragon's house is always short-lived. 2 days later, Jasmine made the mistake of stepping outside the gates. The kidnappers made one mistake. They thought Zhu Yang was a businessman. They forgot he was the dragon. The smell of the warehouse was the first thing to break Jasmine's spirit. It smelled of rotting fish, diesel fuel, and old stagnant seawater. She was zip-tied to a rusted metal chair in the center of a damp concrete floor. Her cheek throbbed where the man in the leather jacket had backhanded her an hour ago. Her lip was split. The copper taste was back, familiar and sickening. There were 6 of them. Men with shaved heads and tattoos that looked like prison scratches compared to the art on Zhu Yang's skin. They were laughing, smoking cheap cigarettes, confident in their leverage. The leader, a man with a jagged scar running through his eyebrow, paced in front of her. He held her phone, the new one Zhu Yang had bought her, in his hand. "He is not coming," the leader sneered. He blew smoke into Jasmine's face. "Do you really think the king of Gangnam cares about a broken toy? We sent the ransom demand an hour ago. No reply. Nothing." Jasmine stared at him, her eyes burning. "He will come," she whispered, not because she believed in fairy tales, but because she had seen the look in Zhu Yang's eyes when he destroyed Chae-rin. He didn't like people touching his things. The leader laughed. He leaned in close, grabbing her chin with rough, greasy fingers. "If he doesn't pay in 10 minutes, we start cutting. A finger for every million he owes us. Maybe we start with the ears. Make you match your background." He released her with a shove. Suddenly, the heavy steel door at the far end of the warehouse rattled. It wasn't a knock. It was a vibration that shook the dust from the rafters. The men stopped laughing. They drew their weapons, pipes, knives, and 2 pistols. "Go check it," the leader barked at the youngest thug. The young man walked to the door. He peered through the peephole. He froze. "What is it?" the leader yelled. The young man turned around, his face drained of color. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Then the door exploded. It didn't just open. It was kicked off its hinges with a force that defied physics. The heavy steel slab flew inward, crushing the young man beneath it with a wet, sickening crunch. Dust billowed into the room. Silence fell. A thick, heavy silence that felt like a hand around the throat. From the swirling dust, a figure emerged. It wasn't the polished CEO in the Italian suit. The man who walked into the warehouse was a nightmare. Zhu Yang had discarded his jacket. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned halfway, soaked in rain and splattered with fresh blood that wasn't his. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing the ink that marked him as royalty in the underworld. Dragons. Black serpentine dragons coiled around his forearms, their scales detailed enough to look real. They twisted up his neck, their jaws open at his throat. He held a knife in his right hand. It wasn't a small paring knife this time. It was a jagged, curved combat blade that caught the dim overhead light. Jasmine breathed. He didn't look at her. His eyes were pitched black. There were no whites visible. His pupils had swallowed everything. He was in a trance state, a state of pure, unadulterated violence. "Kill him." The leader screamed, pointing his gun. The man closest to Jiang lunged with a pipe. Jiang didn't dodge. He flowed. He stepped inside the swing, his movement fluid like water. He drove the knife into the man's bicep, twisted, and ripped it out. The man screamed, dropping the pipe. Jiang grabbed the man's hair, slammed his face into his own knee, and threw the limp body aside like a sack of garbage. 2 more men charged. Jiang spun. The blade became a blur, a slash to a tendon, a stab to a kidney. He moved with a terrifying economy of motion. Every strike was lethal. Every step was calculated. He was hunting. He severed the hand of the man holding the second gun. The pistol clattered to the floor, followed by the severed hand. The man stared at his stump in shock, screaming. Jiang silenced him with a backhand that sounded like a gunshot. The man crumpled. The leader, the man with the scar, was now the only one left standing. He was trembling. He backed away, stumbling over his fallen comrades. He grabbed Jasmine, hauling her chair upright, and pressed the barrel of his gun against her temple. "Stop," the leader shrieked. His voice cracked. "Stop or I blow her brains out." Zhu stopped. He stood amidst the carnage. 4 men lay groaning or silent around him. The floor was slick with red. Zhu chest heaved. He slowly wiped the blood from his blade onto his trousers. He looked at the leader. Then, his gaze shifted to Jasmine. He saw the split lip. He saw the red mark on her cheek where she had been struck. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Zhu tilted his head to the side. The muscles in his neck jumped. The dragon tattoo on his neck seemed to writhe with the movement. "You have 3 seconds, Zhu said. His voice was a low growl. It didn't sound human. It sounded like gravel grinding together deep in the earth. "I'll kill her," the leader yelled, pressing the gun harder against Jasmine's skin. "I swear to God I'll kill her. Drop the knife." Zhu didn't drop the knife. He took a step forward. 1. Stay back. 2. The leader's hand was shaking so badly the gun barrel rattled against Jasmine's skull. "Please," Jasmine whispered. Zhu moved. He didn't run. He vanished. He closed the 20-foot gap in a heartbeat. The leader pulled the trigger. Click. Zhu hand was already there. He had jammed his thumb behind the hammer of the revolver, blocking the mechanism. The gun was useless. With his other hand, Zhu grabbed the leader's wrist. Snap. The sound of the wrist breaking was loud and dry, like a dead branch. The leader howled, dropping the gun. Zhu didn't let go. He spun the man around and slammed him face first into the concrete wall. He pinned him there with his forearm against the man's throat. Zhu leaned in close to the leader's ear. "Who put their hands on her?" Zhu whispered. The leader gagged, clawing at Zhu arm. I didn't, it was just business." Zhu pulled the man back and slammed him into the wall again, harder. Plaster crumbled. "I asked a question," Zhu hissed. "Who touched my wife?" The leader pointed a shaking finger at himself. "Me. It was me. I'm sorry. I didn't know." Zhu stared at him. His face was devoid of mercy. It was the face of a god looking at an insect. "You touched what is mine," Zhu said. He raised the knife. Jasmine looked away. She squeezed her eyes shut. She heard a wet thud. Then a scream that was cut short. Then a heavy slump of a body hitting the floor. Silence returned to the warehouse. Jasmine kept her eyes closed. She was shaking uncontrollably. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by cold terror. She wasn't scared of the kidnappers anymore. She was scared of the man breathing heavily 5 feet away from her. Footsteps approached. Wet footsteps. Something cold touched her cheek. Jasmine flinched violently. "Open your eyes," Zhu commanded. His voice was still rough, still holding the edge of the monster. Jasmine opened them. Zhu was kneeling in front of her. His shirt was ruined. His face was splattered with red speckles. But his eyes, the pitch black was receding. The pupils were shrinking. He was coming back. He held the knife in one hand, but he was using his other hand to gently touch her bruise. "Did they break anything?" he asked. Jasmine shook her head. "No, just bruises." Zhu nodded. He moved behind her. "Don't move," he said. She felt the cold steel of the knife against her wrists. One quick slice, and the zip ties fell away. Jasmine rubbed her wrists. She looked at the bodies scattered around the room. It was a slaughterhouse. "You killed them," she whispered. "All of them." Zhu stood up. He wiped the knife one last time and sheathed it at his belt. "They were weeds," he said. "I pulled them out." He reached down and pulled Jasmine to her feet. Her legs were wobbly. She stumbled into him. He caught her. His arms went around her, pulling her flush against his hard blood-stained chest. He didn't care about the mess. He buried his face in her neck, inhaling deeply. He was shaking too, she realized. The dragon was trembling. "I told you," he murmured against her skin. His breath was hot. "I told you that you are in my territory now." He pulled back to look at her face. He gripped her chin, forcing her to look at him. His eyes were intense, burning with a terrifying possessiveness. You are not allowed to leave my sight again. Ever. Do you understand? Jasmine looked at the destruction he had caused. She looked at the blood on his hands, hands that had peeled an apple for her, hands that had destroyed a fortune for her, hands that had just butchered 6 men for her. He wasn't sane. He wasn't safe. But he was here. I understand, she whispered. Juyong ran his thumb over her bottom lip, wiping away a smear of dried blood. Good. He scooped her up into his arms, bridal style. Let's go home, Juyong said. I need to wash this filth off. And then, I need to wash you. He stepped over the leader's body without looking down. As he carried her out into the cool night air, Jasmine rested her head against his shoulder. She saw the tattoo on his neck, the dragon's head. Its eyes seemed to be watching her. She was safe from the world. But she was in the grip of the monster. Juyang tightened his hold on her. Mine, he growled into the darkness. And for the first time, Jasmine didn't fight it. Steam curled around the black marble tiles like a living thing, thick and suffocating. The bathroom was larger than Jasmine's entire apartment had been. It was a cavern of dark stone and gold fixtures, dimly lit by hidden recessed lights that cast long shadows against the walls. The air was heavy with humidity and the metallic tang of dried blood. Jasmine sat on the edge of the massive bathtub. She was shivering, though the room was warm. Her ruined clothes lay in a heap on the floor, the blood-stained dress, the torn stockings. Juyang stood before her. He was naked from the waist up. His chest was a tapestry of violence. Scars crossed his skin like white lightning bolts, interrupting the intricate ink of the dragons and snakes that claimed his flesh. He was covered in blood, hers, the kidnappers, the old woman's. It was a second skin of red. He reached out and turned the brass handle. The shower head hissed. Water, hot and steaming, began to rain down into the open stall. Come, Juyang said. His voice was no longer the gravelly growl of the warehouse. It was low, quiet, barely audible over the rush of the water. Jasmine didn't move. She couldn't. Her limbs felt like lead. The adrenaline crash had left her hollowed out. Juyang didn't rush her. He stepped closer. He hooked his hands under her arms and lifted her effortlessly. He didn't carry her like a prize this time. He carried her like a child. He stepped into the spray. The water hit them instantly. It was hot. Shockingly hot. Jasmine gasped as it soaked her hair, plastering it to her skull. Juyang stood still, letting the water run over his broad shoulders. He pulled Jasmine against him, shielding her from the direct force of the spray with his own body. Watch. He whispered against her wet temple. Jasmine looked down. The water pooling at their feet was turning color. It wasn't clear. It was pink. Bright, swirling pink that darkened to red as the dried blood on Juyang's skin and Jasmine's injuries began to dissolve. It looks like paint, Jasmine murmured, her teeth chattering. It is the past, Juyang corrected, washing away. He reached for a bottle of dark amber soap. He poured a dollop into his palm. It smelled of sandalwood and oud, earthy, grounding scents. He began to wash her. He started with her arms. His large, calloused hands moved with a gentleness that didn't make sense. These were the same hands that had snapped a man's wrist like a twig less than an hour ago. These were the hands that had held a knife to a throat. Now, they were soft, reverent. He lathered the soap over her bruised wrists. He traced the purple marks left by the zip ties. Does it hurt? He asked, his eyes focused on the bruise. No. Jasmine lied. It burns. Juyang paused. He brought her wrist to his lips and kissed the bruise. The water cascaded over his head, dripping from his nose and chin, but he didn't blink. I will find the manufacturer of those ties, he muttered against her skin, and I will burn their factory down. Jasmine let out a breathy, hysterical laugh. You can't burn down a factory because of plastic ties, Juyang. I can burn down the world if it hurts you, he replied. He wasn't joking. He moved to her neck. He washed away the grime, the sweat, the fear. He was meticulous. He cleaned behind her ears. He cleaned the hollow of her throat. Jasmine closed her eyes. The heat of the water and the rhythm of his hands were lulling her into a trance. Why? She asked. Juyang stopped. His hands rested on her shoulders, his thumbs tracing her collarbones. "Why what?" he asked. "Why me?" Jasmine opened her eyes. She looked up at him through the steam and wet lashes. "I'm nobody, Juyang. I'm a delivery girl. I have debt. I have no family. I have nothing to offer you. You have an empire. You have women like Che Rin." Juyang's face darkened at the mention of the name. "Che Rin is a snake," he spat. "But she fits," Jasmine insisted. "She fits in your world. She knows the rules. I don't. I'm a liability. You saw tonight. I got kidnapped. I made you weak." Juyang gripped her shoulders tighter, not enough to hurt, but enough to hold her in place. "Look at me," he commanded. Jasmine looked. "Do you see this?" He gestured to his chest, to the tattoos, to the scars. "Do you see the ink?" "Yes. This is my armor," Juyang said. "Since I was a boy, I have been building it. Layer by layer, scale by scale. I built it to keep the world out. To keep the fear out. To survive." He took her hand and pressed it flat against his chest, right over his heart. She could feel it beating, slow, steady, powerful. "Everyone sees the armor," Juyang whispered. "The business partners, the rivals, the women like Che Rin. They see the dragon. They see the money. They see the power." He leaned his forehead against hers. The water ran down their faces, mingling their tears and the shower spray. "But they never see the man inside the castle," he said. He closed his eyes. "Then you came along." "Me?" Jasmine asked softly. "You," Juyang confirmed. "You with your helmet and your bubble tea and your loud, messy life. You didn't knock on the gate. You didn't try to climb the wall." He opened his eyes. They were liquid obsidian. "You invaded my thoughts, Jasmine." He moved his hand to cup her cheek. "That night in the alley, when the bullets flew, you didn't check for your own safety. You didn't check for your wallet. You threw yourself over my mother. You bled for a stranger." His thumb stroked her cheekbone. "I have never seen anything so pure," he said. "In a world of wolves, you were the only thing that was real." Jasmine felt a lump form in her throat. I just reacted," she whispered. "Exactly," Juyang said. "Your instinct was to protect. My instinct has always been to destroy." He turned her around gently, so her back was to him. He poured more soap and began to wash her back, avoiding the healing bullet wounds with surgical precision. "I didn't marry you for honor," Juyang said, his voice directly in her ear now. "I didn't give you the ring because of a debt. That was a lie I told the world. That was a lie I told myself." "Then why?" Jasmine asked, leaning back against his chest. She could feel the hard planes of his muscles. "Because when you are in the room," Juyang confessed, burying his face in her wet hair, "you are the only person in the room." He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her tight. The water cascaded over them, washing away the last pink swirls of blood, leaving the water clear. "When I am with you, the noise stops. The plotting, the violence, the constant calculation of who is trying to kill me. It all stops." He took a deep, shuddering breath. His chest expanded against her back. "I can finally breathe," he whispered. Jasmine felt the weight of his words. They were heavier than the jade ring. They were a confession of dependence. The monster needed a keeper. The king needed a queen. She turned around in his arms to face him. She reached up and touched the dragon tattoo on his neck. The ink felt smooth under the water. "So I'm not a prisoner?" she asked quietly. Juyang looked at her. His vulnerability was raw, open, bleeding. "You hold the keys, Jasmine," he said. "You have always held them. If you want to leave, if you want to walk out of this bathroom and out of that front door, I will let you go." He paused, his jaw tightening. "I will burn the city down in grief. But I will let you go." Jasmine looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes. The fear of being alone again behind his armor. She thought about her old apartment. The cold. The loneliness. The endless deliveries. Then she thought about the way he had looked at the paramedic. The way he had destroyed a fortune for her honor. The way he had come for her in the warehouse. He was a monster. But he was her monster. She stood on her tiptoes. She pressed her lips to his. It wasn't a hungry kiss. It wasn't a desperate kiss. It was a seal. A promise. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered against his mouth. Ju Yang let out a sound that was half groan, half sob. He crushed her to him, burying his face in her neck again. "Thank you," he breathed. He held her there under the water for a long time, just rocking her, as the steam turned the world white and the water ran clear and clean around their feet. "Ju Yang," Jasmine said after a while, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "Yes, my love? The water is getting cold." Ju Yang laughed. It was a genuine rusty sound. He reached out and turned the handle. "Then let's get you to bed," he said. He picked her up again. But this time, as he carried her out of the bathroom, he didn't look like a man at war. He looked like a man who had finally come home. 1,000 camera shutters clicked at once, sounding like a swarm of mechanical locusts descending on the grand ballroom of the Seoul Dynasty Hotel. Jasmine didn't blink. She didn't flinch. 6 months ago, a loud noise would have sent her diving for cover, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm of trauma. But tonight, the noise was just applause. She stepped out of the limousine, the cool autumn air biting at her exposed skin. Ju Yang was already there. He stood on the red carpet, waiting. He wore a tuxedo that was blacker than the void, tailored to perfection, the silk lapels catching the frenetic light of the paparazzi. He extended his hand. "Ready?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that cut through the chaos. Jasmine took his hand. Her grip was firm. Her palm was dry. "Always," she replied. She stepped onto the carpet, and the world seemed to inhale sharply. The dress Ju Yang had commissioned for her was not designed to hide. It was designed to declare war. It was a floor-length gown of liquid gold silk that clung to every curve, shimmering like molten metal with every step. But it was the neckline that drew every eye. It was an asymmetrical cut, leaving her right shoulder entirely bare. There was no makeup covering the skin. There was no shawl. There, stark and raised against her dark, glowing skin, was the star-shaped scar where the first bullet had shattered her shoulder. It wasn't ugly. It was a map of survival. A reporter thrust a microphone over the velvet rope, nearly hitting a security guard. "Mrs. Yun, Mrs. Yun," the reporter shouted, desperate. "Is it true that you refused plastic surgery for your injuries? Is it true you kept the scars on purpose?" Jasmine stopped. Ju Yang stopped with her. He looked at the reporter with a glare that could curdle milk, but Jasmine squeezed his hand, signaling him to stand down. She turned to the camera. She looked directly into the lens. "Why would I erase the proof that I survived?" Jasmine asked. Her voice was calm, amplified by the dozens of microphones. The reporter stammered. "Well, most women, in your position, they want to look perfect." Jasmine smiled. It was the smile of a woman who had looked death in the face and laughed. "Perfection is boring," she said. "Survival is dignified." She turned back to Ju Yang. "Shall we?" she asked. Ju Yang looked at her with a mixture of awe and terrifying pride. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed the jade ring that still sat heavy on her finger. "Lead the way, my queen," he murmured. They walked into the ballroom. The heavy doors swung open, and the chatter of Seoul's elite died instantly. 300 heads turned. Senators, chaebol heirs, actresses, and rival gang leaders posing as businessmen. They all looked at the delivery girl who had become the crown princess. Ju Yang's mother, the matriarch, was sitting at the head table. She stood up immediately. She walked across the dance floor, her cane tapping rhythmically. She ignored the dignitaries. She walked straight to Jasmine. The old woman stopped. She looked at the gold dress. She looked at the scar. "You look like a warrior," the mother said, her voice thick with emotion. Jasmine bowed her head slightly, a sign of respect, not submission. "I learned from the best, mother," Jasmine replied. The matriarch reached out and touched Jasmine's cheek. "My legacy is safe," the old woman whispered. "The Yeon Empire. It needs a heart as much as it needs a fist. You are the heart, child." Ju Yang placed a hand on Jasmine's waist. "Let's get a drink," he said, steering her toward the private balcony. "The air in here is too recycled. Too many liars breathing it. They stepped out onto the wide stone terrace overlooking the Han River. The city lights reflected on the black water, creating a kaleidoscope of neon. It was quiet here. The party was a muffled thrum behind the glass doors. Zhu leaned against the stone railing, watching her. He took a sip of his champagne, his eyes dark and contemplative. "You were perfect in there," he said. "I was terrified," Jasmine admitted, leaning next to him. "You didn't show it. That's the armor you taught me to wear," she said, tapping his chest. Zhu chuckled. He set his glass down. He turned to face her fully, trapping her between his body and the railing. "Jasmine," he started. His tone shifted. It became serious, heavy. "What is it?" Jasmine asked, sensing the change. "There is something I never told you," Zhu said. "About the night of the shooting." Jasmine frowned. "We know everything about that night. The rival clan, the ambush, the rain." Zhu shook his head. "No. You know about the violence. You do not know about the motive." Jasmine felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. "What motive?" "They were targeting your mother. I just happened to be there." Zhu looked down at his hands. He twisted the gold signet ring on his pinky. "You didn't just happen to be there, Jasmine. What do you mean?" Zhu looked up. His eyes were intense, predatory. "I ordered the noodles," he said. Jasmine stared at him. She blinked, trying to process the words. You ordered the spicy rice cakes?" "But the order came from a burner phone. It was for the alleyway, I know," Zhu said. "I made the call." "But why?" Jasmine asked, confusion knitting her brows together. "Why would the Dragon of Gangnam order street food to a back alley in the rain?" "Because I knew you were the rider for that zone," Zhu confessed. Jasmine froze. "I had been watching you for 3 months, Jasmine." He took a step closer. "I saw you in January, delivering in the snow. You were shivering, your lips turned blue, but you gave your hot pack to a stray dog outside the convenience store." He reached out and touched a lock of her hair. "I saw you in March. A customer threw his drink at you because it was cold. You didn't yell. You didn't cry. You just wiped your face, stared him in the eye, and told him to have a blessed day. The fire in your eyes, it captivated me." Jasmine's mouth fell open. You were stalking me?" "I was hunting," Zhu corrected softly. "I bought the building your noodle shop was in just so I could check the security cameras to see when you clocked in. I routed my motorcades past your delivery zones." He rested his forehead against hers. "That night, I wanted to meet you. I wanted to create a situation where I could accidentally run into you. I ordered the food to the alley where I was meeting my mother, thinking I would pay you. Maybe offer you a job, offer you a way out." He closed his eyes, a look of pain crossing his face. "I didn't know the assassins were there. I brought you into the line of fire. It was my obsession that almost got you killed." Jasmine stood there, the revelation crashing over her. Most women would be terrified. Most women would run. But Jasmine wasn't most women. She was a woman who had married the dragon. She looked at him. She saw the guilt eating him alive. She saw the twisted, dark way he loved. He hadn't just stumbled upon her. He had chosen her. Long before the blood, long before the jade. "You knew?" she whispered. "You knew who I was?" "I knew everything," Zhu said. "I knew your shoe size. I knew your favorite bubble tea flavor. I knew you were the only thing in this city that wasn't gray." Jasmine looked at the scar on her shoulder. "So," she said slowly, "you owe me even more than I thought." Zhu opened his eyes. He looked surprised. He had expected anger. He had expected fear. "I owe you my life," he said. "I owe you my soul." Jasmine reached up and grabbed the lapels of his tuxedo. She pulled him down to her level. "Good," she whispered fiercely. "Because I plan to collect." She kissed him. It was a kiss of acceptance. A kiss that said, "I see your darkness, and I am not afraid of the dark." Zhu groaned, wrapping his arms around her, lifting her slightly off the ground. "I love you," he growled against her mouth. "I am obsessed with you." "I know." Jasmine smiled